The legal wrangling between the White House and Congress over the Mueller report continues this morning.
Seems like it's never going to end.
Yeah.
Here now to break down the latest in the back and forth battle, Fox 5 legal analyst Wendy Patrick. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning.
Everybody yesterday, what is executive privilege? What does that mean? What does that mean? So now the president says executive privilege, he doesn't want anybody to see the unredacted version of the Mueller report. Explain.
Well, we have privileges under the evidence code for a variety of reasons. For example, I couldn't subpoena you and ask what you and your wife talked about at the dinner table last night.
Okay.
We have marital privilege, lawyer-client, doctor-patient. We know about all of those. But where do we find out what the parameters are of so-called executive privilege? It's not explicitly in the Constitution, but it's assumed within separation of powers. It's a privilege that exists usually for several primary purposes. Number one, as you can imagine, national security interests. Number two is a little fuzzier. Executive branch communications that are related to the job of the executive. Now, what even does that mean and how broad is it? Well, when you talk about the things that it's being used for here, unredacted information that could pertain to several categories that fall under the first category, you can understand how it may be asserted. But it's a little fuzzier when you talk about, well, can you just assert executive privilege to stop people from testifying? And if you try to do that, what relationship do you have to prove in order to have that sustained? Now, you see these questions are deliberately amorphous, which is why they're headed to courts who can actually listen to information that the three of us and our listeners are not privy to make that determination.
Okay, so it's not, so when I ask you, does executive privilege not apply to anything in particular? Is there?
That's right. It does not apply to something that wouldn't fall underneath the umbrella for which it was designed. In other words, something has nothing to do with national security interest, nothing to do with communications that might jeopardize White House private deliberations. If you just assert it and there's no nexus to the information that's sought to be repressed, it's not going to hold water. And that is why there's a lot of pushback as to some of the materials that it's being asserted to protect.
Can the president, it seems like a lot of this they're figuring out as they go along. Can the president use executive privilege to perhaps prevent Robert Mueller from testifying if that happens or not?
Well, remember that when Jim Comey was going to testify, the president proclaimed, and through Sarah Sanders and himself, that he had the option, now this is him speaking, not lawyers, but he had the option of asserting executive privilege back then and chose not to do so. Fast forward to yesterday, it was Attorney General Barr that wrote a letter to the president telling him, requesting him to please assert executive privilege to prevent the unredacted Mueller report from being released. Wow. So this isn't something the president came up with because he knew the law. This is a direct request from Attorney General Barr.
So now there's that vote that came in from the committee, right, for contempt. So that came in 24-16. So what kind of punishment now does Barr face moving forward?
That's right, Chris. Does that mean, are we going to see the next headline is going to be Barr behind bars? Is he going to arrest himself as the nation's top cop? How would that even happen? Right. So that's a very, very unlikely. You know, you don't ever want to say anything's out of the question, especially under this administration. I mean, we have new things to talk about every day. But more likely, it's something that, well, obviously the full House, they'll probably be voted in because it's partisan. But then what's the sanction going to be? Will it be a fine? Will it be held in abeyance? Will it be challenged? And will we go to court on that too? And if that's ultimately what ends up happening, I mean, you know, the wheels of justice turn slowly, and it could be a very long time, probably past the 2020 election, before we have any real resolution on these issues. And don't the constituents want to be focused on what matters to them?
The issues have gotten
housing, healthcare, college. I mean, these are the things that voters care probably more about than whether or not we get to see the unredacted Mueller report.
So Donald Trump Jr. gets subpoenaed by the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, which is Republican.
Republican, yes.
Can the president keep him from doing that?
That's a much trickier situation. You know,
everything is trickier.
Well, but this is far more removed from some of the from the Mueller report in its unredacted form, particularly because we know some of those redactions. I mean, one of them has to do with national security, another one has to do with grand jury material. Donald Trump Jr. testifying is different. I think the better argument there is when he was subpoenaed to he wasn't subpoenaed, that's my next point, but when he voluntarily testified in 2017, he was told, this is it. This is one and done. And he did that, and he stayed as long as they wanted to talk to him because of that reason. So now to say, well, now we're going to bring you back, and it's not voluntary, we're going to subpoena you, you can tell the tensions are a little higher. I suppose the only saving grace here is that the transcript of what he said the first time is made public, so it's not going to be the kind of perjury trap that might otherwise lie for him. But is he going to show up, or is he going to fight back? As we already hear, he's probably trying
another
to
no-show, perhaps? Well, did he get that previous promise in writing? They just told him this is one and done.
Everything's got to be in writing.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be in writing. But then people can change their minds as well, so never easy.
Ain't that
boy.
the truth? Oh, we're all lawyering around here. Wendy, Patrick, thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, guys.